case here, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. So, I'm going to do this, the inheritance. This has been my current read, and I was wondering why I haven't read. And part of the reason as to why I'm here to analyze it is just as a tribute to the author who happened to have passed on in December this year, around 6th. So the book is Inheritance. It was approved by the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development in 2017. The publisher is Longhorn and the author is David Mulwa, the later. I tried to find some questions concerning the inheritance, and I didn't find many questions. So I want to assume it was more of an optional text. That's why there were very few questions, because what I got were actually two essay questions. And the first question was, what goes around comes around. You validate based on the book Inheritance by John Mulwa. The other question was, pretenders are worse than murderers. So you are to support that in light of the book The Inheritance. So before we continue, The Inheritance, like I've told you, it was authored by David Mulwa, who was actually a professor, because now he's later. The characters include Thorn Mackey, we have the attendant, we have Bishop Meninga, we have King Kutula, the 18th, we have Princess Sangoi, who happens to be an adopted daughter, of King Kutula. Then we have Tamina Zenmelo, we have Romanos Bengo, we have Lulu Zenmelo, we have Judah Zenmelo. So Judah Zenmelo is married to Tamina, and together they have a child known as Lulu. Then the other character is Lakuna Kaso. Then we have the teacher, we have Mama Melissa, we have the counselor, we have Chipande, we have Councillor Malipoa. These are some of the advisors to Lakuna Kaso, who is the current king. Hi, Bala, welcome. Then we also have Daniel Goldenstein. So in the book, The Inheritance, he also goes by the name Danny. Then we have Robert Rollaston, who happens to be called Bob. That's the short form. We have first elder, second elder, third elder, the woman. We have the attendant 1 and attendant 2. We have Mejak. We have human leader. So basically the book also tries to show us the role of women in the society, especially when it comes to leadership. And we have the male leader, we have elderly leaders, young woman leader, we have the palace. So in the prologue, what happens there, it is the setting is in an African continent in the early 20th century, and we know by then that is when we had the coming of visitors, the missionaries, the traders, the colonizers into the African continent. So what you can see there is the mansion of the Governor Thorn Mackey is high up on the plateau overlooking the wide wild plains of Kutula colony. So just like in Kenya, for example, you will find the settlers came and took the highlands. How do you want to be supported? So they took the highlands so that they could go and do the farming, have ranches and such kind of things. Like the high school I went to was formerly known as Highland Girls. So it was started by the colonizers, the Britons. So what I saw there that caught my attention is the living room, um, which was having lavish taste, like there's a lot of, um, can we say, extravagances. Like you see a king size lion, a kudu, and antelope. Yeah, so these heads, so they are literally more of trophy hunting used to be done, and people would use those heads, they assemble them even in their living room to show they're in control, in they're in power. I think for those who have happened to have followed Lynn Gugi, know what I'm talking about, especially the story about this guy who was killed by a buffalo, and it became big news, when in reality it was the buffalo trying to establish boundaries, because why are you doing trophy hunting of lions and such kind of things, which are actually heritage, and you don't do these things in your own country? Yeah, so that's what caught my attention. Yeah, then we have the paintings of the imperial majesty, of course. We have the blue eyes, so colonialism was the main theme on the prologue. um, then we see the attendant, who are actually more of slaves, and the topic is about the book The Inheritance, yeah, by John Mulwa, this one. Yeah, so I'm trying to share what I have read so far. So I think the attendants, they're like, yes people, yes sir, yes sir. I don't know for why people don't have independence of thought, or maybe they're motivated by money. I don't know what motivates you to do what you do. Some it's for money, others for passion. So you find when you're an attendant, everything you don't question, you're like, sir, sir, yes, madam. Yeah, so that's why we see that happening here. Um, the prologue did not have much, which I would have mentioned, but there's also page 5 where they're saying, here wine and women never made an empire. So according to Thorne, like women uh, and leadership don't go hand in hand. Um, but we'll see as time goes by that actually women can lead. Yeah. Then 30 years later, now when we have the first setting, what happens, or at least from what I saw, we have Sangoi, who has now gone to abroad to study, yeah, and such kind of things. So movement 1, and something I noted with the way the author wrote this book, we have some scenes which are extra long, especially in the first movement 1 and movement 2. At least in movement 3 they were a bit shorter and more comprehensible, but the rest, you had to read at least in 2 sittings or 3 to finish. So the first movement, we are seeing it's in Kutura Republic, and now it's after post-independence, yeah. But we're seeing the independence is not that much. People are still, actually, there's neocolonialism happening. So like here that telling us over 30 years have passed in the now independent Kutula Republic. In the old grass-touched hut of Joda Zenmelo, the sitting room also serves as the kitchen. Yeah. On both sides of the back wall, there are openings that lead to Lulu's and the parents' bedrooms, respectively. The aperture covered. So there is that vivid description of the level of poverty. Unlike where people are living lavishly, here they are living in their huts. So there's that traditional setup and such kind of things. We are actually even seeing poverty by the fact that, or is it environmental activism, because they are having eco-friendly furniture, like the old wooden folding chairs. Yeah. So Bengo, who happens to be the brother-in-law to Tamina, because he's the brother to Judas and Melo, comes in and he requests for water because he was from a long journey. He happens to be one of those guys who are doing the revolution. A book, yeah, it's a book I like to recommend, The Inheritance. Yeah. So we have the daughter coming in, Lulu, from school. So we are seeing the theme of education. Yeah. And Lulu wants to grow up and be a doctor. Yeah. And we are left in suspense. We don't know whether she will be able to finish her studies or not, after I read the book. So she is in her fourth form. She was about to finish school. I believe either it was 844. During that time we had the ordinary levels and A levels. So unfortunately there is the challenge of school fees and she is sent home. She looks really mad. Yeah. So there's neocolonialism, where Tamina says in page 19, the water, 2 weeks after they took you away, the machines came. The chief rounded up all our men, women and children who were to receive unlimited water from one source. Why? He said, all the brooks and springs will be led to one large dam at the foot of the mountains. That is what the government of the leader had agreed with Chipande in order to bring the machines, you see. Like, people have left to their own country, the colonizers, but it's like technically the indigenous citizens, or rather the leaders who are there, are still ruling under the oversight of the foreigners. Yeah. So that is what the government of the leader had agreed with Chipande in order to bring the machines, and Reverend Sangoi protests availed nothing. So you can see the role of even religious leaders in bringing revolution. Yeah, you need to stand up for something or you fall for nothing. That's what came to here. So people came up in large numbers to inaugurate the dam. Yeah, so we have that theme of inheritance, whereby people get to inherit leadership from their parents. So like for Lakuna Kuso, he got the inheritance from King Kutula the 18th. Yeah. So thereafter people are missing waters. The water that was directed to the dams is now being used for irrigation, and people are actually forced to leave their fertile lands so that the colonizer, yeah, the financiers can use it for profit. So Tamina goes to say that's why each drop is very precious, because now they have to go kilometers to fetch water like before. Thereafter we can actually see despair and frustration. That's why even Tamina says, I dropped Anna a long time ago because God called me Tamina from my mother's home, not Anna or Grace or anything that Lakuna pretends to worship. So we have the theme of religion there, and people trying to find their identity. Actually, today I was watching this podcast by, is it In Between Jesus and Jollof? Yeah, so it was about African identity. So the lady on that podcast was like, she even had to drop her Jewish name, you know, the Christian name, and adopt the African name because it meant something to her. Yeah. For example, if I'm called Ruth, I change to something because Ruth does not make really sense to me, and you feel pissed off. So people, they are trying to find their identity. So really, they even drop their names. Yeah. So what happens is finally Bengo leaves some money to Tamina, and Tamina wants to throw it away, but Bengo just leaves on the table so that it can be used, yeah, even by the niece. Another theme that I saw was about Mercy. So it was his last refuge. They took him to Lacuna himself, and he made a feast with the great ones, and all was laughter and wine until Lacuna told him to do the impossible. So people are having that merry, especially the king's treatment. You understand? Like if today you are to go to State House or White House, the treatment will be not the ordinary. That'll be merry. Yeah. A man called, okay, there's also capitalism, whereby they're saying, a man called Romanos Bengo, your brother, the communist. Will you pluck this stone out and then pledge your royalty anew, my boy? That gesture won't be in vain. All my councillors know it. So the councillors who are being referred are Malipo and Chipande. There will be good things. Judas and Melo, and you and your family will never want. You see, the promises which are given by leaders, yeah, so that you can do the impossible. You can actually see when you succumb to that promises, there is betrayal of close family members. Thereafter, we are also seeing the role of medicine, because Judas and Melo was dumped, his mangled body at our government house doorstep. And who saved him? It's Dr. Jonathan, who happens to be the husband of Reverend Sangoe. Yeah. So we're being told time passed and it got better. Then he called me to his bedside at the hospital and bitterly cursed you because you disobeyed what he always told you, even when he was toiling and paying your school fees. Yeah. So there we are also seeing betrayal. Judas and Melo was financing Bengo to go to school. So he felt betrayed. How dare this guy not follow what I'm telling him? Yeah. So leave politics to the leader, for he is ordained of God. So what I learned that was that sarcasm. In my language you say ikiwana kiugia komenya. So you'll find that people tend not to stand for the truth. They just want to hesitate to stand on the fence. Yeah. There's also the theme of change, where Tabina, who was now accustomed to a rich life, living in the good government house, her coffee farm in Bukengele Mountains, all was gone, and now she was just a peasant woman. Another thing we're seeing is Tamina referring to the king Lacuna as the octopus. So in some way we can give her a character trait as someone who is abusive. Octopus, where's the names? Yeah. There's also the theme of poverty, where Bengo says, I see poverty makes it hard for us to see straight, but one day you will. In theory we also used to say that you cannot advise someone on an empty stomach. Yeah. So if someone is blinded by poverty because of that scarcity, whatever you tell them, even if it's jump from a cliff, they'll just ask how far can I jump. They're ready to do anything and everything. Yeah, that's another thing we're seeing there. So poverty indeed hinders judgment. So that was it. Thereafter we also see that theme of poverty, where Lulu comes from school and the principal said I had no choice. Many of us had no choice. We had to pay or stay out of school. Unlike before, during the colonialist period, where children could actually access education education because the schools were built here, they are to pay. The illusion of the so-called free education is not there. So, and she goes on to give a breakdown of the money. So, like, there's construction fund 3,000, perimeter for the perimeter wall, for the computer science lab. But at the end of the day, Lulu, the Tamina says, computer science and no food, no water in the house. Activity fee 1,000, and that whole breakdown of the fee. And that brings me to the reality right now, even in Kenya. People are asking, how dare we start saying we want change, we want to be like Singapore and such kind of things, so we want to construct a certain number of kilometers of highway, yet we already have highways, when people are actually suffering from hunger. Yeah. So others will argue that development is not a big problem, it's okay, but food security should be the base. Once people have full stomachs, we can now discuss other matters. But again, I meant to understand, when we're talking about food security, for it to be safe, for it to be available, for it to be enough, and those kind of things, there's need to bridge the gap, because we come from different ecological zones. So as such, we need to bridge the gap, the distance. So yeah, transport is necessary. But until then, we need to invest more on agriculture. Yeah, that's the foundation, and water, and perhaps energy, before we start talking about other sectors. Anyway, Tamina goes to say that in a resigned mode, just to tell them I can't pay. Every morning I wake up before cock crow and pick those coffee beans until sunset. I walk all this distance back home and nobody has paid me for this extra work. The white jobs, people want to be paid even for consultation. Yeah. For example, if it's teachers, there's that marking, and this is why she was complaining. She's not being paid anything extra. Why is it that the rest want? So it's like the way the system is made, people feel it's not fair. Yeah, or they're being exploited and extorted. So they go ahead. Tamina goes to say, the holiday is over. We must also tighten our belts and contribute. It happens all over the world, or at least that's what the leaders are telling them. Like in Kenya, we keep saying that some of the challenges we're facing, like when there was the energy crisis, fuel prices went up. We were like, these things are not just common to Kenya only, or unique to Kenya. They're happening even to Russia and such kind of things. So everyone is affected even by the wars. Yeah. Unless couldn't we perhaps ask the principal to let you learn on credit if I promise to work harder? You see, now every child tends to see their parent as solvers of the problems, and this is why we're seeing Tamina suggesting that perhaps someone can learn on credit, then you pay them. And I saw this on some group. Someone was like, you enter even on some jobs, like you as a BOM member, and people are like, you'll have to pay some amount to the welfare kit even before you're given the job. And the author was like, why can't you give me the job, then deduct automatically the welfare fee? Why are you requiring people to do things even before they put their heads in? So we have what? Maybe it's because of our greed or what? But again, now when it comes to running of institutions, you understand you need money to keep afloat. So yeah. What else I saw is determination, where Lulu is determined to be a doctor, and that's why she tops in school, just like she had pledged to neocolonialism.